Hi, I'm Megha Sharma, and joining me today is a special guest, Dr. Mukesh Aghi. He's the president and the CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Thank you, Dr. Aghi, for once again speaking to me on
My
NewsX.
pleasure.
What brings you to Delhi this time?
Well, we are basically looking at enhanced participation by US companies in India's economic growth story. They want to invest more, and we're also celebrating the 250 years of US independence. So this Friday at the Oberoi, we'll be having around 200 plus business leaders to celebrate the partnership between the two countries.
I have to speak to you because when we talk about the strategic relationship between United States and India, of course, the number one thing that pops in one's head is the trade deal. We still wait till it's finalized. Is there any momentum building, and what are your sources or the people that you're interacting with in the White House, in the Department of Commerce? What kind of feelers are you getting?
Well, one is, the relationship should not be defined purely by the trade deal. The relationship is much bigger, both from an economic perspective, from technology perspective. Yes, US is one of the biggest partners of India on trade side. What we are hearing, in fact, I saw Jameson Gray before I came here, is they're optimistic. I think the fundamental issue is July 24th, the 122 10% tariff drops out. And what happens after that is they've initiated something called 301, where they can put in much higher tariffs. So I think India is waiting to see what direction that finding goes before you can move things forward. But I think both sides have made statements. They're optimistic, trying to close this deal in the next couple of months.
There has been a big announcement made that the generic drugs, which India is a huge exporter of to the United States of America and other parts of the world as well, are going to be tariffed 200% by United States administration. There have also been proposals of United States imposing tariffs to the tune of 12.5% on the goods that are brought into their shores if a country uses or imports any raw materials or any goods which are produced by forced labor. Do you think these proposals and these announcements are going to hinder the trade deal between the two countries?
I don't think so. I think there's enough maturity on both sides. Look at substance rather than fluff on the announcements. When you look at India has roughly supplies almost 40% of the generic drug to the US, which is almost $10 billion. But they bring tremendous amount of savings to US government on the pricing part. Now, the moment you put in tariff, who gets hurt is the US consumer. And so I think there will be some understanding how to manage that. So I wouldn't react to it at 200% or 100%. But yes, on the 12.5% on forced labor, that has been put into many, many other countries also, not just India itself. And India has basically has sent a directive that they will not use forced labor for the goods going to the US. So I think in every aspect, there's a lot of noise coming. We just have to look at the substance and move forward.
But don't you think it's difficult to identify if a good or a service is being produced by forced labor? What are the specifics that are being looked upon by India or by any other country or even the United States of America in being able to have a decisive evidence that yes, this is forced labor? Don't you think it's a little variable and something that cannot be identified right there and then?
No, absolutely. I think when you look at the supply chain, they are not just across different entities, they're across different countries. I mean, you look at the generic drugs in India. Basically, the APCs come from China. India can't certify it. Their forced labors are not forced labors. So I think it's very, very difficult to dissect that and say, okay, this part is forced labor, this part is not. I think with time, it will settle down. I wouldn't react to it too much.
You know, Prime Minister Modi also met President Trump on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Both the leaders held a bilateral. What is your reading on that meeting that was held?
I think the relationship is very good. The president has a good understanding of the prime minister. He likes him, calls him my friend itself. So I think from a principle to principle, the relationship is very good. I think you have certain people within the administration who would like to put more tariff on India, who are listening to countries like Pakistan. And I think we just have to, as a large nation, as a large growing economy, stay our course and not react to some of the statements being coming through the politicians.
Right. Also, the USA State Secretary Marco Rubio is also in Philippines. He, along with the other Quad foreign ministers, held that important meeting, which also signifies the kind of push and importance that is being given to Quad. Although there has not been a Quad Leaders Summit in the last 2 years, there has been a statement that has been released by Marco Rubio saying that United States and the rest of the three countries remain steadfast in their effort to ensure there is open and free seas in the Indo-Pacific. There was also a lot of controversy that was rigged because of the United States dropping the word Indo in the US command, US Pacific command. Do you think this is just rumors that really don't impact the Quad that was formed many years ago? And do you think there actually is a forward movement in furthering the cause of the countries in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, Quad is reciprocal. That means it benefits all four countries, in a way trying to counter some of the non-democratic countries trying to basically usurp land and sea lanes. Quad is not just about partnership on the defense side. It's a partnership on cyber. It's a partnership on critical mineral. It's a partnership on maintaining secure supply chain. So the importance of Quad continues to grow. Yes, for the last 2 years, we have not had a leaders summit, but if you look at it, it never used to be a leaders summit. It was always at ministerial level. So I think Marco Rubio having a second time in the last few months sense the importance that Quad is very, very important to the US and other three partners. Now, as far as you mentioned about US dropping the Pacific Command from Indo-Pacific, I don't think that matters. You have Indian Ocean, you can't change that name. You have India as a country, a large country, a very old civilization. It'll keep on continuing the way it needs to continue, basically look at its own trajectory, look at the goodwill of its people, and define its interest in the international order. So I don't think by changing the names, it impacts India's position or foreign policy.
The West Asia crisis continues to escalate. There was an MOU that was signed, but it has very swiftly been, violated by Iran, and the United States of America is also at this point of time retaliating aggressively. How is the US economy facing, and is it really able to insulate itself from this crisis that is impacting the entire world? And how do you think there can be resilient supply chains that can be built between India and United States of America to have the least impact of the crisis that we are seeing on the Strait of Hormuz and also in Red Sea now?
Well, when you look at the position of US on the energy side, and when you look at the position of India's on energy side, they're extremely opposite. US is a net exporter of energy, and India is a net importer of energy. So when the supply chain gets impacted on the energy side, it's India which gets impacted. My understanding is for every dollar, when the price of oil goes up, it has an impact on almost $1 billion on India's foreign exchange. So I think it's important that India looks at in every corner of the world to ensure it has energy security. By moving its supply from Russia Venezuela, India is trying to find that balance. By moving, US supplying now tremendous amount of LNG to India, that also cushions the impact of West Asia crisis. So I think India is in a very difficult position from an energy perspective, and it has to find ways to maintain that. Yes, it's focused on renewable, and now it has decided that it's going to go much more nuclear energy from almost 7+ gigawatts to 100 gigawatts, and that's where I think US can play a very pivotal role. We just heard the announcement or partnership between US and Saudi Arabia on the nuclear deal. It will have an impact on the region. But I think you have to also understand something which is happening in the region is I2U2, which is India, Israel, UAE, and United States. Because what we are seeing is something else coming up called PETS, which is Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, and Saudis are having a defense alliances. That has an impact on India. So I think beside the energy aspect of the challenges, the coalition of these countries also will have an impact on India in the mid to long term.
Also, during the war, when the Strait of Hormuz was blockaded, it still is, the US president had lifted tariffs on countries purchasing oil from Russia. Right after the MEU, there has been a fresh announcement that countries again purchasing oil from Russia are going to be sanctioned, are going to be heavily tariffed. Do you think at this time where we see that the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is also being blockaded, and if the situation may turn worse, it's very fluid for India to buy oil from countries, whether it's Venezuela or for that matter, Russia, and US president and the administration may have to turn back on its policy of countries buying oil from Russia.
Well, there's politics and there's reality. India needs to do what's good for India. If it has to buy oil from Russia, it'll buy. It has to buy oil from Venezuela, it will buy. You have politicians in the US who like to pass a legislation 100% tariff. But I think you have to go then impose the penalty on that. But the clause I read also has exemption. And I think India will get an exemption from that perspective, because the moment you put pressure on India not to buy Russian oil, it will spike the prices globally. It will spike the prices for Europeans. It's going to spike the prices for the Americans also. Today, the average price per gallon in the US is over $4. We used to be around $3. So I think while politicians will make noise, the ground reality is that India needs to import its energy. And if Russia becomes a source, India will leverage that source.
I do want to once again, since you mentioned about the nuclear deal that is going to be signed between United States and Saudi Arabia, do you think this is going to send tremors in the Gulf region? Because there has been a similar deal that has been signed with the UAE, but of course there are restrictions. They are not allowed to enrich uranium, and there are also questions being raised that is Saudi Arabia also going to use it, weaponize it to its advantage?
Well, the safeguard in the deal with Saudi Arabia are not there as what we have seen with UAE. And as time goes by, it'll take probably 10 years for a nuclear plant to set up. And after that, you start getting to enrichment. Hopefully, Saudis will not use it as a nuclear weapon. But, if Iran's threat continues, then Saudis may not have a choice but to get that. But Saudi already have a relationship with Pakistan, where they are able to access their nuclear technology, their nuclear weapon also. So I think it's too early to say, but I think the concern, if I have, is that we have taken the safeguards out what they had been put on UAE deal.
And finally, you've come to Delhi. This is on international headlines that there is a massive student protest that is taking place in India and particularly in Delhi. It is the Cockroach Janata Party that is spearheading the the agenda of these students because of the paper leaks. What kind of perception is being built in America about this?
Well, India is a democracy. And in democracy, opposition plays a role. and basically you have protests going on, and then the Americans see, the people see it as like in the US we have protests going on. We just had it on July 4th against President Trump. We had no King's protests happening. So I think in every democracy you'll have that. The question is what benefit it brings to the society. That's what's going to matter here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Aghi, for once again speaking to me on NewsX.
Thank you very much.